These are steroids first. So structure, they have a common structure of steroid. Steroids, as we know, they have a cyclopentanoperhydrophenanthrin ring that is common to all the steroids. So whatever the steroids means, they must have that structure in common to them. Okay, next is cortico. What is that cortico? This is the adrenal cortex that we are talking about. So any hormone that is secreted from the adrenal cortex. Okay, this is the adrenal cortex. Inside it, adrenal gland, inside is the medulla. Medulla is a representative of some autonomic nervous system. Okay, sympathetic nervous system. It is post ganglionic cell bodies. Okay, so this contains post ganglionic cell bodies, adrenal medulla, and that secretes adrenaline and little noradrenaline also. The cortex, adrenal cortex, that secretes our corticosteroids. So although they are in the same gland, but they function completely differently. So medulla is a sympathetic part of sympathetic system, and the cortex is endocrine. So this is the structure common to all. Cyclopentanoperhydrophenanthrin ring. It has 4 rings. 3, 4. You can see the numbering 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it is 21 carbon atom, and there are three hexagonal benzene structures and 1 pentagonal structure. Okay, depending upon the side chain, they have different names and different activities also. Okay. So broadly, we can divide these corticosteroids into 3. One is a mineralocorticoid, means they are involved in salt water metabolism. They regulate the salt and water. Glucocorticoids, they regulate the carbohydrate mainly, although they also control the calcium and your protein, fat. Okay, but mostly they are concerned with the glucose metabolism. Then another set of hormone, the androgens. So they are also secreted from the adrenal gland as well. So the gland has 3 different zones: zona glomerulosa, zona fasciculata, and zona reticularis. Accordingly, they regulate the salt, they regulate the sugar, or they behave as sex hormone. So they are called salt, sugar, sex. Okay, this is the structure. This is the kidney. Okay, at the upper pole of the kidney, there is an adrenal gland closely attached at the upper pole, and the outer part is, this outer part is cortex. Okay, in a microscopic view, you can see this part is capsule, forget about it. Then comes the zona glomerulosa, this one, small, this section, outer part. Then the middle part is zona fasciculata of this cortex only this cortex. Only when this cortex is magnified, it leads to this one, zona fasciculata and zona reticularis. So zona glomerulosa, as we had told, I had told, it is related to salt metabolism. So mineralocorticoid. Zona fasciculata, that is again S, but here it is sugar. Okay, so it is glucocorticoid. And lastly, reticularis, that is again S, but here it is sex hormone, and it is mostly androgens. Ultimately, androgens are also converted to the female sex hormones because of the presence of one more enzyme like aromatase. Aromatase can convert these androgens to female sex hormones, estrogen, that is. Again the same thing, you can see middle part is the zona, middle is medulla. We are not concerned about it. It is the sympathetic nervous system, and it is a second order neuron. Okay, second order neuron, cell bodies only cell bodies. There is no axon. So these cell bodies they form the medulla. They secrete noradrenaline. You can say it's catecholamines. Catecholamines mostly adrenaline 90%, noradrenaline 10%. And this ratio is just the reverse in case of sympathetic nerves elsewhere. Now coming to the layers, again same from outside to inside. Okay, glomerulosa, fasciculata, reticularis. In short, GFR. GFR stands for glomerular filtration rate. That term can also be used as a mnemonic. So GFR, salt sugar sex. Salt sugar sex. So this is how to remember which zone of the adrenal cortex secretes which hormone. GFR from outside to inside, glomerulosa, fasciculata, reticularis. Salt sugar sex. Salt is mineralocorticoid, sugar is glucocorticoid, sex is androgens and estrogens. Now the synthesis. You see, the starting material is cholesterol. Cholesterol, always. The plasma cholesterol, because of the action of one side chain cleavage enzyme, that is cholesterol desmolase. Cholesterol desmolase that cleaves the side chain. Okay, this side chain that will be cleaved mostly from this part. This part will be cleaved, so it will become pregnenolone. Pregnenolone. Okay, so this pregnenolone is the first dedicated molecule for steroid synthesis, be it mineralocorticoid, be it glucocorticoid or sex hormones. Okay, so once the pregnenolone is formed, because of the action of the cholesterol desmolase and the side chain is cleaved, now it can go to this line, because where this will happen, this mineralocorticoid pathway in zona glomerulosa. Zona glomerulosa contains this enzyme 3-beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase, in short HSD, 3-beta HSD. So this 3-beta HSD converts the pregnenolone into progesterone. One additional enzyme you can see here, 17-alpha hydroxylase, that may be present in the zona fasciculata, that is not present in zona glomerulosa. In the fasciculata, because of the presence of this enzyme 17-alpha hydroxylase, pregnenolone is converted to hydroxypregnenolone, or progesterone is converted to 17-alpha hydroxyprogesterone. And this is the glucocorticoid pathway. Because of this one key enzyme that may be missing in the zona glomerulosa but present in zona fasciculata, the glucocorticoid hormones can be synthesized in zona fasciculata. In the reticularis, in addition to the previous two, that is 1720 liase. Because of this extra enzyme present in zona reticularis, the androgens are synthesized. These are usually called weak androgens. And when they either form androstenediol, then subsequently testosterone, or androstenedione forms testosterone. This part will consider in under sex hormones. But just remember, the same starting molecule pregnenolone can form all the hormones, those have the steroidal structure. Okay, it can form mineralocorticoids, it can form glucocorticoids, and it can form sex hormones. These are all sex hormones. These are weak and this is strong. Okay, further stronger is there, another is there, dihydrotestosterone is there. We'll discuss in that sex hormone chapter. So for the time being, we'll see these two, glucocorticoid and mineralocorticoid pathway. So once the pregnenolone is converted to progesterone, what next? You see, The pregnenolone, this progesterone, you see, progesterone, that is the fast hormone, active hormone that is synthesized. So progesterone can go along this way, can go along this way. So progesterone, when acted upon by another enzyme, that is 21 beta hydroxylase, the molecule is found 11 deoxycorticosterone. Then another enzyme comes into play, 11 beta hydroxylase, corticosterone is synthesized. Lastly, aldosterone is synthesized, the last enzyme, and aldosterone is synthesized. So there are three enzymes in this mineralocorticoid pathway. In the previous page, it was 3 beta, then came 21 beta, then last one is 11 beta. These are the three enzymes. They are responsible for your synthesis of mineralocorticoids. Lastly, aldosterone synthesis. So 3, 21, 11. It is not 3, 11, 21, but the sequence 21 comes in between 3 and 11. This is how that happens. Okay. And this is the most common enzyme responsible for congenital deficiency in case of congenital adrenal hyperplasia. This is the deficiency in the body occurs mostly because of this one. Mineralocorticoid deficiency occurs mostly because of this 21 beta hydroxylase. Genetic deficiency may occur that leads to congenital adrenal hyperplasia. And coming to the next path, the glucose. So the aldosterone is your key mineralocorticoid. Then glucocorticoid, pregnenolone becomes 17-hydroxypregnenolone, then becomes 17-hydroxyprogesterone because of 3 beta, or progesterone directly becomes 17-hydroxyprogesterone because of the action of the 17-alpha hydroxylase. So either this way or that way. So once the hydroxyprogesterone is there, the further steps are again the same enzyme, again same 21 beta hydroxylase enzyme that converts the 17-hydroxyprogesterone to 11 deoxycortisol. And then again comes the next enzyme, 11 beta hydroxylase, 3 gone, 21 is over, now 11, and 11 converts the deoxycortisol to cortisol, and this is our glucocorticoid. Okay, so these are the natural mineralocorticoid and these are natural glucocorticoid. By converting the side chains or the addition of some new groups to any of the position like 9 position, 17 position, 21 position, we can form different synthetic corticosteroids and glucocorticoids as well as mineralocorticoids. You see, this is the further part of the androstenedione. These are the sex hormones, androstenedione. That is further converted. I was telling these are the sex hormones, androstenedione and testosterone. And these are further converted to the female sex hormone, either estrone or estradiol. Testosterone is converted to estradiol, androstenedione converted to estrone because of one presence of one cytochrome P450 enzyme, that is aromatase. And drug like anastrozole or another drug is letrozole. Letrozole that prevents the aromatase enzyme and prevents the conversion of testosterone to estrogen. On the other side, testosterone is further converted to one more active testosterone, that is dihydrotestosterone, and the enzyme is 5-alpha reductase, and the drug like finasteride and dutasteride, they block the enzyme 5-alpha reductase, and they are useful in benign hypertrophy of prostate or prostatic cancers. And this is useful, this anastrozole letrozole whenever there is excess of the female sex hormone, particularly in case of males. Even in females also, whenever there is excess of the estrogen and the estrogen hyperstimulation, at that time we can use anastrozole and or letrozole. The feedback regulation. Hypothalamus, similar to the regulation of the thyroid hormone, here also the prime regulator, that is hypothalamus, that releases corticotropin releasing hormone CRH, and that acts on the pituitary. It is the anterior pituitary. Okay, and when stimulated by the CRH, the pituitary will release ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone, ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone, and this acts on the ACTH acts on the adrenal cortex, and adrenal cortex releases corticosteroids. Okay, and the feedback inhibition, you can see, because mineralocorticoids, they have little feedback mechanism on this system. Mostly this feedback is because of glucocorticoids, not because of mineralocorticoids. They are controlled by another mechanism, that is renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system. Okay, that is control. Mineralocorticoid related effect, whether how the salt will be metabolized, whether it will be retained or excreted, and how much is to be excreted, all that is controlled by renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system. So that doesn't exert any negative feedback. This is already negative. So glucocorticoids particularly exert the negative feedback inhibition on pituitary as well as hypothalamus. If we supplement the glucocorticoid from outside, suppose like tablets or injections or anything, if the patient is consuming this glucocorticoid from outside, then it suppresses the pituitary as well as the hypothalamus, and a natural secretion of CRH as well as ACTH will get diminished. Okay, there will be decreased secretion, and pituitary, there will be suppression of hypothalamus, pituitary and adrenal axis, that is HPA. So if we administer the drug from outside, it usually causes suppression of the HPA axis. This is called, in short, it is called HPA axis. So there is suppression of HPA axis on external administration of glucocorticoids. So to avoid this, because the maximum secretion of this usually happens at the morning 8 a.m. The timing is important. Exactly at the morning 8 a.m. the biological level of these hormones are at the highest level. So if we administer our drug glucocorticoids from outside source at that time, the body, there is less chance that the body may ignore this externally administered this glucocorticoids. So that will lead to less suppression of HPA axis. If we administer in the evening, when the actual concentration of this CRH or ACTH is less, if we administer at that time, if the corticosteroid level is also less at that time, evening time, if we administer glucocorticoids at that time, and there will be maximum suppression of this HPA axis. So it is better to administer the steroids at this time only, 8 a.m. morning 8 a.m. sharp. Okay, now the mineralocorticoid actions. So mineralocorticoids, they cause sodium reabsorption and potassium and hydrogen excretion. I will show you how. You see here the aldosterone, mineralocorticoid is aldosterone. This figure is from your KD Tripathi. So aldosterone will bind to the mineralocorticoid receptor. MR stands for mineralocorticoid receptor. The combination will be mineralocorticoid aldosterone combination. This receptor and ligand combination, receptor and ligand is aldosterone. That combination that migrates into the nucleus, because this is steroid receptor, so the receptor is intranuclear. So within the nucleus that binds to specific hormone response element. That is, here the hormone is mineralocorticoid. So response element is mineralocorticoid response element. It is that specific region of the nucleus where there is transcription, selective transcription of mRNA, and this mRNA is translated to aldosterone induced protein, AIP in short. It is aldosterone induced protein. This protein, once synthesized from translated from mRNA, that has multiple jobs. Number one, you can see it stimulates the mitochondria to generate more ATP. This ATP is utilized for maintenance of this one, sodium potassium ATPase pump. This AIP is also transformed into sodium potassium ATPase pump, which drives sodium from this cell is actually this I have not told you, no? So this cell is representative of the cortical tubular cell in the nephron. So in the cortical tubular cell, this is a collecting duct. Sorry, the cell in the collecting duct. So it is the luminal side of the nephron, and it is the basolateral membrane. Okay, it is the basolateral membrane. So at the basolateral membrane, the sodium potassium ATPase pump is there, and it drags or it pushes actively sodium from the cell into the body. Okay, and in turn the sodium potassium comes, it may return back or it may get excreted. So to get excreted, there is one exchange here. One sodium enters into the cell from the urine, that is the collecting duct lumen, into the urine, into the cell, and one potassium is exchanged, and that is excreted in the urine. Okay. So you see the things. One is energy. This energy is utilized to drive the sodium potassium ATPase pump. AIP, that is also transformed into the sodium potassium ATPase pump. And this AIP also reactivates some of the dormant sodium channel to active sodium channel. So dormant sodium channel to active sodium channel. This sodium channel, because it responds or it can be blocked selectively by amiloride. So it is particularly called, this sodium channel is called amiloride sensitive sodium channel. Amiloride sensitive sodium channel. Okay. Either inactive channels are incorporated or fresh channels are synthesized and incorporated. Anyway, number of sodium channels will increase in the luminal membrane, luminal side, that facilitates more and more sodium to be absorbed, and this sodium ultimately that is driven out of the cell into the body. So what happens? There will be sodium retention and potassium loss. When potassium is lost in excess and there is potassium depletion, the hydrogen is also lost. So there is chance of there will be hypokalemia, and because of the loss of H+ ion, there may be alkalosis. Okay. Next. So when there will be excess mineralocorticoid, what will happen? Sodium will be retained, so also water will be retained isoosmotically. This, they will combine, they will go side by side. Whenever there is salt absorption, water is absorbed isoosmotically, water follows. Because of this excess salt and water, there will be increased circulatory volume that leads to rise in BP. At the same time, because of the excess circulatory volume, there will be edema. And whenever there is excess salt is absorbed, that is, so sodium is absorbed, potassium is lost. Okay. So there will be hypokalemia. When potassium is lost in excess, hydrogen comes into rescue, and that is also lost. So there is loss of hydrogen ion, and it leads to alkalosis. So now the deficiency. Okay. So what will happen in the deficiency? Obviously, sodium will not be reabsorbed back. Okay, it will be lost. So sodium loss, uh, even in sodium deficient condition also, because there will be no fresh sodium channel incorporated in the basilateral in the luminal side. So sodium has to be lost. Okay. And this thing actually, although the sodium is lost, you can see the water is still absorbed by the kidney, because water absorption is not dependent on, although it is absorbed isosmotically by the sodium along with sodium, but even in the absence of sodium absorption, it is absorbed because it is under prime control of antidiuretic hormone. So that incorporates fresh porine channels along the collecting duct. Okay. So because of these porine channels, water absorption continues. When water absorption continues, what happens? The blood, there will be dilution of the sodium in the blood. So dilutional hyponatremia will occur. Okay. So when there is dilution, what will happen? The water will move to that region where there is high salt concentration, usually into the cells. Okay. So that will leads to hyperhydration of the cells. Cells, they will usually swell up. Okay. And when water moves into the cell, the circulatory volume usually decreases. So there is decreased blood volume. So what are the things? Dilutional hyponatremia, hyperhydration of the cell, and decreased blood volume. At the same time, two more things will occur, because sodium is not reabsorbed, so potassium is also not lost in exchange. So potassium get accumulated within the body, that leads to hyperkalemia, and so also the hydrogen ions that are not also not lost, and leads to more hydrogen ions and acidosis. So hyperkalemia and acidosis are the two other additional things that happens along with hyponatremia and decreased blood volume. Now the glucocorticoid action. We have very few minutes, 2 or 3 minutes. Quickly we'll go as far as we can. Okay. So carbohydrate metabolism. Here there will be glycogen synthase activation. It leads to some of the glycogen storage in the liver, but the liver cannot store much of the glycogen. It is because it is mostly usually full. Okay. But on the other hand, neoglucogenesis, that will be activated to a larger extent because of the activation of the neoglucogenic enzymes. Okay, because of the neoglucogenesis, other sources like protein and fat, they are converted to glucose, and there will be loss of fat as well as protein, but there will be excess of glucose. So diabetic-like state may appear in glucocorticoid excess. And the other thing, that is some receptor related thing, the glucose transporter, which actively uptake the glucose from the blood, from the circulation into the cell, they are usually translocated into the cell. They migrate into the cell. Internalization of the GLUT receptors. So GLUT receptors are not available for uptake of the glucose. So there is decreased glucose uptake, and therefore utilization as well as. So because of the neoglucogenesis and GLUT expression, lower expression, there will be high blood sugar, and diabetic like state may appear in hypercorticism. Now coming to protein metabolism. Protein breakdown occurs because of the neoglucogenesis. It converted to amino acid and converted to glucose. Because muscle also contains large amount of the protein, okay, myoproteins, they get wasted, and because of the muscle wasting, the limbs become thin limbs. And also the skin proteins underlying the subcutaneous tissue proteins, they are also lost. And also the bone, loss of osteoid, it is the bone unit, osteoid, and because of the loss of bone protein, there is spongy bone, and there is skin thinning, and there are stria marks on the body. Okay, and it creates a typical condition, that is orange over matchstick. Orange over matchstick. Thin limbs, because of the muscles wasting, there is a protruded belly. Okay, and limbs are very thin, so it is typically described as orange over matchstick. And the there will be, because of the excessive catabolism, there will be negative nitrogen balance. Negative nitrogen balance means less buildup, less nitrogen assimilation in the body, but more excess loss. So catabolism is more, anabolism is less. So it leads to negative nitrogen balance. Fat metabolism. Here the adrenaline has permissive role only, and it promotes lipolysis by the other hormones usually. And when there is excess of this hormone, glucocorticoids, actually there is a redistribution of the fat to the truncal region. In fat metabolism, actually there is permissive role. Okay, they don't do anything directly on their own, but permissive means because of the action of the thyroid, the hormones responsible, or the neurotransmitters, or the catecholamines also, they also to some extent affect this fat metabolism. You know, the beta 3 receptor mediated lipolysis also occurs. So the hormones are responsible. One is thyroid, another is insulin, okay, and another is your adrenaline or noradrenaline through beta 3 receptor. Okay, so these three hormones, for the action of these three hormones mainly, one is neurotransmitter, thyroid, insulin, and adrenaline, noradrenaline. Here this these glucocorticoids, they have the permissive role. They, in their presence, the biological action of this thyroid or insulin or adrenaline will be more, because insulin particularly acts along the truncal region in the midline in the human body. Okay, in the human body, in the midline region, the action of the insulin on the adipose tissue is more. For that reason, whenever there is excess of the glucocorticoid, what happens? There is a redistribution of the fat. How the fat will be redistributed? They will accumulate more in the truncal region, in the midline. Okay, this is a limb, this is a limb. Suppose this is the head. So along the midline region, there will be excess deposition of the fat. So it is truncal fat deposition. This is mainly because of the action of the insulin, where it is permissive. So because of the permissive action of this glucocorticoid on the insulin action on this adipose tissue along the central line, and there is fat deposition, in excessive fat deposition of the truncal in the truncal region, things that occur usually: moon face. The face becomes moon-like, rounded. Okay, moon face, we say Chandrabadana. Buffalo hump on the back of the, at the nape of the neck, there will be accumulation of your, what is that, your accumulation of your fat, and it creates one impression of buffalo hump. And because of the mouth, because of the excessive deposition in the face, the mouth becomes short, like fish mouth, chota mouth. Okay, small mouth, and it is called typical. The trio or triad is moon face, buffalo hump, fish mouth. That is typical expression of the glucocorticoid excess, and this happens usually in Cushing syndrome. The glucocorticoid excess is Cushing syndrome. Okay, in Cushing syndrome, other than that orange over matchstick, these three things also appear. Now calcium metabolism. Okay. So here there is minimal effect, but still then there is decreased absorption of the calcium from the intestine and increased excretion of the calcium through the kidney. Although the calcium regulating hormones are something different, like calcitonin, vitamin D, and parathyroid hormone. These are the calcium regulating hormones. Still then, corticosteroid has some effect in the normal presence of all those hormones. Usually they try to balance the calcium, but whenever there is excess of the corticosteroid, this may happen because of the decreased intestinal absorption and increased loss in the your increased loss in through the kidney. There is formation of spongy bone because of the decreased formation and increased resorption, and there is loss of osteoid, less absorption, less formation, but the resorption that continues because osteoclasts they keep on doing their thing, so it leads to spongy bone, and bone mineral density is usually less. There is propensity, there is every chance that the fracture may occur, easy fracture. With a trivial trauma also, the fracture may happen. Water regulation, I have already told. Mineralocorticoids, they help in salt and water retention. Not only water, salt and water both. Because salt is absorbed, so water is absorbed isoosmotically. But when the glucocorticoid action, that has opposite action. Why? Because glucocorticoids, they are responsible for maintenance of the circulation. They maintain the GFR. So when GFR is maintained, water is excreted well. Because when there is GFR is normal, the RAS system, renin angiotensin aldosterone system, that is not overactivated. That is under control. Okay. And when renin-angiotensin system is under control, the water excretion is normal, or it may increase even. Okay. And whenever there is deficiency of the glucocorticoids, there will be, what will happen? Water excretion because of glucocorticoid deficiency. Also, because there is sodium is lost. Sodium is lost, but the water is absorbed. In case of mineralocorticoid deficiency, there will be hyperhydration of the cell, and there is a decreased circulatory volume. There will be water intoxication. Cardiovascular system, they maintain the cardiovascular system normal function usually. Usually they maintain the capillary permeability, they maintain the vessel tone, and they maintain the myocardial contractility. Only maintenance. Okay, no exaggeration, no no decrease in activity. Okay, so usually the maintenance, and these glucocorticoids and mineralocorticoids both have permissive role on the action of the adrenaline and angiotensin. These are usually our vasopressors. Okay, vasopressors. They maintain the blood pressure. But in the absence of these glucocorticoids and mineralocorticoids, okay, the vasopressor action, okay, the vasopressor action of adrenaline and angiotensin will not be optimal. It will always low. Okay, so in this condition, there is chance that there may occur cardiovascular collapse, particularly in mineralocorticoid deficiency and glucocorticoid deficiency. That is Addisonian disease, Addison's disease. Okay, Addisonian crisis, when it is excess. In Addisonian crisis, the cardiovascular collapse happens. Skeletal muscle. Usually, skeletal muscle, you know, there are muscle proteins are there. So the glucocorticoids are required for optimal activity. But when there is excess, the muscle proteins will get wasted. Okay. Whenever there is glucocorticoid excess, there will be wastage because of excess catabolism, excess protein catabolism. Okay, decreased protein in the body. Okay, because of the excess catabolism. So because of the loss of protein, there will be muscle wasting. At the same time, few more things are there. If there is a hypocorticism, okay, there will be hypodynamic circulation. Okay, because maintenance of the blood pressure, vessel tone, this myocardial contractility or capillary permeability, they will not be maintained, so there will be circulatory collapse, and because of this hypodynamic circulation, muscle may not get sufficient amount of the blood, it leads to weakness. Okay, and because of this muscle wasting, there is also weakness. Okay, and whenever there is a hypercorticism, there will be hypokalemia, because sodium will be absorbed, potassium will be lost. So when potassium will be lost, there will be again hypokalemia. There is weakness because of the hypokalemia. So excess is bad, and deficiency is also bad, and glucocorticoid excess, it is also bad. So these mineralocorticoids as well as glucocorticoids, they are required for optimal skeletal activity. In CNS, there will be generalized mood elevation, and there is a sense of euphoria. It is irrespective of the condition of underlying disease condition. Okay, so whatever the severity of the disease, underlying disease may be, if we administer the glucocorticoids, then there will be some degree of mood elevation, and it may cause some degree of euphoria. And it is also required for optimal neuronal sensitivity. Okay, optimal neuronal sensitivity and excitability. But when we give in large dose, there will be excitability. Anybody saying something? Whenever we administer in high dose, there is chance that there will be increased excitability. It may lead to seizure. Okay, if the seizure occurs, what will happen? Seizure, epilepsy. It is usually for this reason. Whenever the patient has any epilepsy, history of epilepsy or seizure, we don't prescribe the steroids. So before prescribing this, you have to inquire about epilepsy or seizure. Okay. Lastly, hematopoietic effect. You see, there will be destruction. They typically destroy the lymphocytes, both T as well as B, but T are more than B. T impacts the cell-mediated immunity, and B gives humoral immunity, antibody-mediated humoral. Okay, so both are suppressed. For this reason, sometimes some lymphocytic malignancies like lymphomas, Hodgkin or non-Hodgkin lymphomas, the steroids are given as a for the suppression of these lymphocytes to contain the flaring up of the disease, to control the spreading of the disease, to achieve the remission, It is a point where we can control the disease effectively. So to achieve the remission in case of lymphomas, the steroids are usually given because they cause destruction of the lymphocytes. And because there is a destruction of the lymphocytes, steroids usually decrease the immune power. So because of this, the immunity is also compromised. Okay. Some of the cells, RBC and platelets particularly, there is temporary increase in the number of the RBCs and platelets, and other cells, they are usually sequestered, mostly in the spleen or somewhere else. Okay, lymphocytes, eosinophil muscle. So mainly there is suppression of the lymphocytes, there is suppression of the neutrophils. Only the RBCs and platelets, they are in excess, and the effect is usually short term. As soon as we stop the drug, stop the steroids, the level comes back to normal. Okay.